Lisita, I want you to understand that your last name is Guerrero, and Guerrero means warrior. You were born to fight.
Lisa Guerrero, a true warrior by name and nature, a successful journalist and trailblazer in the sports world, but not without enduring significant hardships along the way.
Had a miscarriage during Monday Night Football because I was so traumatized and sick. And so 40 million people didn't know that I was enduring that late in the season during a game.
It was then she decided to reclaim her voice and life. And now it's all laid out in her new book.
Knowing what you know now, what would you say to your younger self?
Understand your worth. Understand and demand your seat at the table.
Welcome to The Conversation with Pat Harvey. In this series, I will dive into various topics and issues with my guests in a more intimate and unfiltered setting. My guest today is a woman of many talents. She's an award-winning investigative journalist, actress, and author, just to name a few. Please welcome Lisa Guerrero.
It is so nice to be here with you, Pat. You are everything.
Oh.
You are an icon, and I adore
Lisa.
you, and I'm so thrilled to be here with you today.
Well, Lisa, right back at you.
Wow.
I'm so happy that you agreed to come on and have this conversation, because I want people to know just how special you are. Those that don't know, I want them to know. You have had such an incredible, multifaceted career, including time here at KCBS, in fact, and
right.
Inside Edition. We're going to get to all of that.
Okay.
But first, I want to start from the beginning, and that means your upbringing. I know you were born in Chicago.
I was. I was born in Chicago to an immigrant mother from Chile, Lisa Guerrero, and an American dad who went to University of Chicago for his master's in social services. They married in Chicago, and we came to Southern California because he became the director of social services in San Diego for the Salvation Army.
Aww.
So he spent his life serving people as a social worker. And so I grew up in San Diego, and that's where I was when we found out that my mother was diagnosed with cancer.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. I know you were 5 years old when you moved to San Diego, if I'm correct.
Correct.
Also, you were very young when your mother came down with lymphoma.
Correct. Yeah, I was 8 and she was 29.
Oh, and she passed.
She did, and you know, back then there were not the various treatments for lymphoma that there are today, and so she found out at around Christmas time, and she passed away by Valentine's. So it was very fast. I was 8, my brother was 6, but Pat, before she died, she pulled me into her room and she said, "Lisita, I want you to understand that your last name is Guerrero, and Guerrero means warrior. You were born to fight." And I didn't know what that meant at 8 years old. And then I later found out how important my heritage was and my name, and that's why I wrote the book Warrior.
And we're going to hear about the book and what you have experienced to really become a warrior, and you are still one. I do have a little funny aside, though. I want you to tell me where the nickname Q-Tip came from.
You did read the book.
Yes, I did.
Q-Tip was because when I was growing up, I was tall and skinny and being raised by a dad who had no idea how to help me out when it came to hair or dressing. I would cut my own hair at about this length, and I have naturally curly, fuzzy hair. So I was this skinny, and I had this big fuzzy head, and I got teased, and I became Q-Tip.
That is so cute. But that's also when you form such a strong bond with your father after your mom's death. And that was such a young age, you know, to experience losing a parent, especially a mother. I appreciate reading what your father taught you. In fact, he taught you a lot about football.
He did.
Right?
And that is the reason that I became enamored with sports, because my dad taught me the language of sports, and he taught me how to throw. I said, you know, at the time we were in San Diego, I wanted to play for the Chargers, and I wanted to be a quarterback like Dan Fouts. And he said, well, you better get in the backyard and practice. So he taught me how to throw a perfect spiral. And when we went to Padres games, he went up in the stands with me and taught me how to score a game.
Technical.
Yes, and so I became in love with sports because my dad was, and I soon realized that that made me different from other girls. I knew the secret language of sports, and so later when I had an opportunity to pursue broadcasting, it was the sports department that I wanted to work in initially, and so that's what got me to CBS too, and I became the first female sportscaster here.
You did a lot in the NFL, but I even want to go back before that because I know and appreciate the fact that your father was okay with you taking the name Guerrero, your mother's name.
Thank you for saying that, Pat, because that was a big deal at the time. And you know, when I became an adult, I realized that I was very proud of my Latina heritage. I was proud of my mother's name, and I was proud of the role that she gave me as a warrior. And when I was in my 20s, I said to my dad, I love you. I love our grandparents on your side, but I feel like I really connect with my Latino heritage more, and I want to be a Guerrero. And do I have your permission and your blessing to change my last name so that I'm Lisa Guerrero? And he cried and he said, Lisa, your mother would be so proud if you took her name.
Such a wonderful man.
He's wonderful. And I still have him today. He's 87.
Oh my God.
And he's watching and he loves you.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway.
Thank you so much. Well, and thank you for raising such a wonderful woman. You know, we talked about you getting into sports broadcasting, but before you went into sports broadcasting, you were a Rams cheerleader. Before you were a Rams cheerleader, I think I read where you wanted to be involved, you wanted to be a dancer, but that wasn't very easy for you as well because some of the other girls at the time in, was it Huntington Beach?
Yeah.
In Orange County, they weren't so accepting at first.
Right.
Right?
Well, I really struggled. You know, I didn't have a lot of girlfriends because I didn't have a mom and I didn't really know how to do anything girly. But I wanted to be a cheerleader. I tried out for cheerleading in high school and didn't make it. I tried out in junior college at Golden West College and I made it. And all of the women on that squad said, we're going to go to Rams cheerleader tryouts and basically steal choreography because none of us thought we'd actually make it. And back then in 1984, this was the heyday of NFL cheerleading and everything was about Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders.
Right.
And
They
I
were
was
first,
this,
right?
yeah, they were the first. And I was this kind of awkward 19-year-old that didn't have a formal dance background, but I kind of thought this would be a cool thing. And 1,300 women tried out for the Rams cheerleaders that year, and they only took 7 rookies. And somehow, inexplicably, I made that squad. And so from 1984 to 1987, I was a Rams cheerleader, became a captain, learned how to dance, learned leadership skills and how to perform in front of people. And, but I would look over on the sidelines at attention. There's the game. I'm on the sidelines, and I would look over there, and there's Jim Hill reporting from the sidelines. And I said to the girl next to me, someday I want to be a sportscaster like him. And she looked at me and she said, girls aren't sportscasters. And a few years later, I was working with Jim Hill on Sports Central.
You know, that's, I'm not going to say incredible. I'm going to say for you, I think obviously that's something that your father instilled in you, self-confidence to be that warrior. And I just want people to understand it wasn't easy even when you were a cheerleader. That's not something that just came to you like that. You worked to be a Rams cheerleader, and listen, that's important stuff. Everybody can't do that. And what's really endearing to me is you posted a picture not long ago on social media. Was that your original squad from the
That was
Rams
my original
cheerleaders?
squad, yeah, 1984, and we're still best friends. 40 plus years later, we're all best friends, and we all do girl trips together and celebrate everybody's birthdays and weddings and divorces and life journeys. And
That's pretty
we're
cool.
all close.
And they have to be so proud of you, considering what you've done since then, which is what we're going to talk about. But just the fact too that this wasn't just something that you just did to have fun, or that it was back then and now it's over. To have that kind of friendship, or still have a relationship with women for that long, that's a long time.
To me, women and women helping women and women supporting other women is everything, because I didn't have women in my life. I didn't have a mother, I didn't have sisters. So to me, I forged my own tribe because I needed to have female influence in my life. And so I found it. I looked for it and I found it, and I treasure it to this day.
I was going to say, and you still have that, and I know you mentor other young women. You talked about seeing Jim Hill on the sideline. So, was that the first spark for you when you said, I'd rather, no, I shouldn't say rather, but I'd like to do that. I'd like to become a broadcaster. So now, how did you start on that journey to become a broadcaster, a sports broadcaster?
Around the same time I was a cheerleader, I signed with a modeling agency and was doing, acting, and I was in Frasier and Matlock and In the Heat of the Night and all these, shows from the 80s and 90s. I had an agent, I was doing commercials, and I would always show up at my commercial shoots or my acting shoots with the sports page. And so all the crew and I would talk about the Dodgers or the Lakers. And a producer said, there's no other women on sports here in Los Angeles that know what you know. Can you think about maybe being a sports reporter? So that's when the wheels started to turn, and I started to think actively about pursuing sportscasting. And again, I got an agent in sports, and I had an agent in acting, and I had 2 different headshots, and I was pursuing both acting and broadcasting at the same time. I ended up on a soap opera, Sunset Beach, with Aaron Spelling, on the same day that I got a contract here at CBS 2 as the weekend sportscaster.
So you were able to do both.
I was doing both for, I think, 15 months straight. I was, Monday through Friday was on an NBC soap opera, and Saturdays and Sundays I covered sports here, and didn't have a day off because on, for example, Christmas, there was a Lakers game. And New Year's, there was the Rose Bowl.
And you worked.
And I worked every single day. And I worked 14, 16-hour days because I wanted to prove to people that a woman could know sports and that somebody that looked like me could be taken seriously.
Okay.
And so I worked hard.
I'm so glad that you said that, and that's what I want people to know, that, yeah, you're still gorgeous. You know that, but you are. And at the time, to be on television, you certainly, you had the looks, you televised well in terms of looks, but you brought something much more to the table. You didn't depend on that. In fact, reading about you, Lisa, it's almost like you didn't really realize that. You weren't necessarily into how you looked. As you said, you would cut your hair before, but you knew sports.
I knew and loved sports.
And let's face this too, being a Latina at the time. You were the first.
I was the first. I was the first Latina. I think I'm still the first Latino ever to be on Monday Night Football. I think I'm the first Latina sideline reporter for the NFL. I was certainly the first Latina here. And I was very naive when I started. I thought, I could look the way I wanted to look because TV's a visual medium, and I wanted to wear bright colors, and I still do, and wear my lip gloss and have my big hair, but also talk about X's and O's and man-on-man versus zone and quarterback controversies. I wanted to talk about those things. And at the time, people were like, who's in your IFB telling you what to say?
Because they didn't think you could do it on your own.
They didn't think I could. So nowadays, I think it's different. You see a lot of female sports, and almost every station has at least one female sportscaster. But back then, I was an anomaly. And in fact, there's a funny picture of me at the media game. The Dodgers every year had a broadcasters versus print media game before one of the Dodgers games. And I looked at the team picture. I'm the only woman on either team that was on there. But it was fun, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. And I thought, as long as I love sports and as long as I convey my love of these teams, that people will accept me. And the viewers accepted me, but the rest of the media was not as kind.
Oh, okay, we're going to talk about that. We can surmise that you were seen when you were a local sportscaster here at CBS 2, and then the NFL, the National said, we're going to give her a try, and they picked you up. Yeah. But as you said, and as I read, it was not easy at all. Can you share some of that, some of the struggles that you went through, Lisa? And you went through quite a few.
One of the reasons I wrote the book is I wanted young women to understand the red flags and to recognize those things that I didn't at the time. And I think that in the book, other than saying, hey, this is my wonderful life, isn't it great, I really point the finger back at myself and talk about some of the things I could have done and should have done differently. I negotiated too much. When a producer would say, wear short skirts, show cleavage, play up your looks, I want you to wear this kind of wardrobe. I was on a show called Sports Geniuses. I was the co-host. The male host wore a suit, but they gave me yoga pants and sports bras to wear on the set as the co-host. And I got on the phone with my then agent and I said, I don't want to do this. I was crying. I wanted to be taken seriously as a sportscaster. And he said, it's a national show. You know, wear what they tell you to wear. And so I negotiated too much. And that really hurt my image, of course, because then I wasn't taken seriously because I was the pretty girl. And so I was constantly trying to thread the needle of showing that I was sports knowledgeable and being a good interviewer, but at the same time, you know, negotiating with producers and trying to be pretty enough. And finally, you know, because of that notoriety, I quickly became, you know, nationally recognized. So I was on the cover of magazines and People magazine and, you know, FHM and Maxim. But at the same time, I was doing good work. I was interviewing Barry Bonds and asking him about whether or not he did steroids, and interviewing Kobe and Shaq when they had, you know, a media blackout, and I got those interviews.
And you did that, Dennis Rodman in particular.
Oh yeah.
But you did that because of how you approached them, which was a very honest approach. Yeah. And they didn't talk to you just because you were an attractive woman. You knew what you were talking about. And you asked them a question. Let's talk about Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
That's in the book. I really enjoyed that piece.
So Barry at the time, you know, was with the Giants and I was covering the Dodgers, and I got this amazing opportunity with Fox Sports Net to cover a national, you know, the national landscape of sports. And I was on a show called The Best Damn Sports Show, period, where I was the only girl and the first female host of that show. And I was kind of the pretty girl that did the updates, but what I wanted to do was sit down interviews. And I know that Barry Bonds would not speak to anybody. He was the toughest get in sports. And so I told my producer, I'm gonna get Barry Bonds. And they rolled their eyes, sure you are. And I said, if I get him, will we air it? And will you give me my own segments where I can have one-on-one sit-down interviews with hard-to-get athletes? And they were like, sure, Lisa, if you can get Barry, you can have that. So it took me about 6 months. I emailed his agent, Scott Boras. I got to his manager. I got to his publicist, Rachel, and finally, and I sent tapes to everybody, and I would show up at batting practice early, begging him to give me a few minutes to talk to him. And finally, I wore him down. And he said, yeah, okay, whatever, I'll do it. And that interview ended up changing my life because he sat down with me. It was supposed to be 20 minutes. It ended up being an hour and 15 minutes, and he cried. We talked about his background. We talked about his parents, his rough childhood. Yes, I asked him about steroids in that interview, and that made national news. And suddenly I became a serious sports journalist.
So you talked to him about life.
I did.
But you know what, Lisa, at some point, though, that also wasn't necessarily enough.
No.
Because you always seem to come up against somebody that is not even going to be receptive for that. And I'm talking about that guy who got in your ear almost every game.
Yeah, and I talk about that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the reasons I wrote the book is I wanted to be honest, and I name names and I talk about specific things that happened to me. After I was on Fox, I was now, you know, a national personality. ABC Monday Night Football came to me and they asked if I could interview to be the sideline reporter for Monday Night Football. And at first, huge, right? And at first I was reluctant because I'd never done sidelines before. That's a specific skill set. Correct. So I actually said no, because I was at the time anchoring and I was a correspondent. It was different. But, you know, it was Monday Night Football. When Monday Night Football says we want you, then you go to Monday Night Football. But I had a boss who was very verbally abusive to me and screamed at me in my ear. And when you're on Monday Night Football, you are live in front of 40 million people with people screaming around you on the biggest broadcast, you know, there is in sports. And I would cry before the games. I was so afraid of my executive producer. I would shake around him. I would forget my stories. I was a shadow of myself during Monday Night Football because I was so scared of him. And I don't know why, you know, he treated me like that. I knew I wasn't the only one. I saw how he treated other people. Years later, I asked Bob Costas about this, and he said, Lisa, in sports, all the producers are screamers. Everybody's a screamer. But I thought, you know, when you're a woman and a man is screaming at you and calling you names and, you know, really objectifying you, that's different. That's different. And it hurt me, and it became a physical problem.
It's trauma for you.
Trauma. It was very traumatic.
And you struggled so much with that, Lisa. There were things that you couldn't even tell your father about.
I couldn't tell my dad. And one of the things that I struggled with during that year of depression was I had lost a lot of weight. I had just been engaged. It was supposed to be the, you know, happiest time in my life. And I became pregnant and found out about halfway through the season that I was pregnant, but I had a miscarriage during Monday Night Football because I was so traumatized and sick. And so 40 million people didn't know that I was enduring that late in the season during a game.
As you were talking,
as I was
you
speaking.
were on the field.
Right.
How did you get through that moment, Lisa? When I read it, first of all, I never heard of that before, and I think that's the first time that you wrote about it, so maybe this could be the first time that you're talking about it. It just really, to think that you endured something like that while you're in front of all those millions of people, and this is happening as you speak.
It was, and you know, during halftime I went in the officials' bathroom and I dealt with it as well as I could, but instead of calling 911 and calling an ambulance and saying I'm enduring a medical crisis, I was so afraid of what the critics would say, and I was afraid of my boss, that I went back out onto the field for the second half, white as a ghost, and put a smile on my face and finished the game, and then flew home and then went to my doctor the next morning. And I remember thinking to myself, I've lost everything now. You know, I've made a mistake. I've endured this person who was abusive to me. I'm going to lose this job. I've lost everything now. I've lost this pregnancy. From now on, I'm going to take my IFB out, and I'm not going to allow anybody to speak to me like that again. And the last couple of games of the season, I was a different reporter. You could see me gain my confidence because I just knew my life was going to change. I was going to lose that job. So I'm just going to tell stories the way I want to tell stories now. And that's what happened. I did lose that job, but then what I gained was my voice.
And boy, did you. I think that we can transition then to Inside Edition.
Yeah.
2006.
2006 came around. At that point, I was done with Monday Night Football. I didn't know what my next chapter was going to be in my life. And Inside Edition came to me saying, we want to do a story about you. So they came to my house, did a story, and that story led to an offer to be a general assignment reporter for them for 2 years. And that became 3 years and 4 years. And finally I was promoted to Chief Investigative Correspondent, because I wanted to do, I wanted to chase the bad guys, Pat.
How about that?
I wanted to do that. And everybody said, you can't do that, it's dangerous work, you have to be up all night, you're gonna be in surveillance, it's tough work. And I just thought, who better than a woman to do this work when so many of the victims of crime and scams and cold cases and consumer reports, so many victims are women. So I said I wanted to do that job, and that just became a match made in heaven. So I worked for Inside Edition for 18 years.
That's amazing.
Did over 700 investigations for the show.
You know, just because our viewers will want to know, you said you were engaged.
Yes.
Did you get married?
I did get married, and I got divorced.
Okay.
And now I'm engaged again.
What? Oh my God.
Yes, yeah.
When did this
There's 10
happen?
years in between.
It's
but
beautiful.
I just got engaged.
Oh,
yeah.
congratulations.
Yes, David, my fiance.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so now we're breaking more news here. You worked, as you said, at Inside Edition for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
You've won like 35 awards at least for the work that you've done. I'm going to ask you this question because I know you've been asked over and over again. Your favorite investigation. Let's start with, you started your book with an investigation.
that
which
was
is interesting. I liked
yeah.
how you got into it.
Yeah,
You did your investigative piece work that meant so much to you, and then you went into your childhood. Why'd you do that?
I wanted people to start by kind of immersing themselves in the world of investigative journalism, to see how important that job is, to see how dangerous it is, and to see how impactful it can be. And that particular story was called Justice for Juliet, and it was a cold case about a little girl who had been killed. And it had been 4 years since her death, and it was now a cold case, and all 3 suspects that were with her at the time were able to go off into other states. And the little girl's aunt called me and said, can you please open up this investigation and help me find justice for Juliet? So we got my producers together and we tracked down all 3 of the suspects, and the little girl's mother turned on her then boyfriend on camera while I was confronting her, and she said, Dustin Chauncey did it. And then I confronted him, and that story led to a grand jury being opened and finally him going to trial. And I was in the courtroom when they found him guilty. He's now serving 80 years to life in prison for killing Juliet Gertz. And for that, I'm very proud, and I'm proud of my team for doing that story. So I start with that story,
Yes.
and then I go back.
And that was eye-opening. I mean, you had me from the first letter, actually, because I wasn't as familiar with this case. Now, I'm going to tell you what every year, just about, you would do a special report that I think every football fan or anybody that traveled to the Super Bowl, and once, not just the Super Bowl, it was like, okay, anytime you go to a hotel, you were like, okay, this place has bed bugs. I mean, and this was a big deal.
Yes.
Because no one else was really doing that at the time, but it proved to be very important work because you were spot on and you got people to pay attention. I paid attention. I was very careful about, well, wait a minute, let me call and check out this hotel or do some research on this particular issue.
Again, going back to consumers, like you're paying a lot of money, and if you're going to a Super Bowl, they jack up the prices for those rooms. And so, we thought, well, why don't we go and do a cleanliness test on all of these rooms that are costing $1,000 or $2,000 a night around the Super Bowl? So we started uncovering all these disgusting things and all these dirty Super Bowl hotels became something we did every year.
Right.
They went viral, they went global, but by like 3 or 4 years in, I started to get so creeped out doing these stories that I started to wear a hazmat suit during them because they were so disgusting. And one year I brought home bed bugs to my own house, had to have my house fumigated. And I'm like, okay, that's enough. That's the last dirty Super Bowl hotel story.
Well, at least you got people thinking about it.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's important.
Because you got me to think about it.
And more importantly, we got the hotels to change their behavior. They started cleaning up those hotels, and they started, caring about what the consumers are paying for.
Yeah, because they knew that they would have to answer to Lisa Guerrero. Because you would show up at some of the most inopportune times. I remember a minister, he didn't know what hit him when you got out of the car. Here's this beautiful lady walking up to him. You had your microphone, and you just started asking him questions that he certainly wasn't expecting. But you certainly had the heart to do that.
That was Kenneth Copeland, who was a prosperity preacher. And I was concerned about the fact that he was buying private jets, with his donors' money. And is that right to do that? And at one point he said, I don't want to get into a tube full of demons, meaning he didn't want to fly commercial with people. So he wanted to have his private jets. And so I asked him about it. And that interview, again, went viral. The uncut version, you can Google it.
It's pretty wild.
1 billion people worldwide have seen that interview. And again, it's about accountability, which is what we're supposed to do as journalists. Speak truth to power, ask tough questions, confront people if you need to, now more than ever. Well,
Lisa, you decided this year, right, to leave Inside Edition?
Yeah, this year.
Okay, what prompted that decision?
So I love Inside Edition, and I loved my experience on Inside Edition, and I speak about it very proudly in the book. But after writing the book, I got a lot of attention, and people have really connected with it. And I got a phone call from Aaron Sorkin, who read my book, and he said, Lisa, your book is a TV series.
It is. There's no question.
He's like, who's your agent? And I said, I don't have an agent for this. And he introduced me to his agent, Mark Corman at William Morris Endeavor. And Mark introduced me to studios, and we picked a studio, Legendary, who's going to help me develop it into a TV series. And now we're looking for a showrunner and head writer. So that we're in the process now of bringing it to life. And that's, I know it's a long process, and this is an industry town, so a lot of people know how difficult it is to get a book made into a series. But I've got a really great team with me, and I think the story is interesting. And again, as a Latina, we need more Latino stories, and we need more faces on camera that are Latino. And we're heading into Hispanic Heritage Month, and this is a good time, I think, for me to be finding the right writer and the right actress to play me. And
you're going to be involved in all of that.
Oh, I'm an executive producer. Are you kidding me? Step on up, actresses. Come on, J-Lo. Come on, Jessica Alba.
Oh, she's calling you out.
Come on.
Congratulations with that, Lisa. That's such a big deal.
Thank you.
And besides the fact that I want people to get your book and read it, because you describe trauma. You talk about so many things that happen and that you have been able to overcome. And that's very important as well. And you write with such honesty. That's why I kept going. I really didn't want to stop turning the page. You talk about things that you'd like to do. Mosaics, for example.
Yeah.
You like doing that on your free time?
Yeah, so I'm an artist, and I think a lot of people, that have kind of traumatic or difficult jobs need to do something else, need to escape that kind of dark space when you're chasing bad guys or criminals. I liked to come home and break glass and and make something beautiful out of something broken, which is really an analogy for life and for my life, I hope. And so to me, mosaics speaks to me. It's about taking pieces of something and making it into something else. And, and all art is really about, finding messages and storytelling. Again, journalism, that is about storytelling.
And then you said that's how you reclaimed your voice.
That's right.
Let me ask you about the book too. Did you write that for closure, or for exposure to others?
So what had happened when Inside Edition went on YouTube, all these kids would be watching my investigations on their devices. And so we got this I have a huge fan base of kids that watch my investigations that like to see me chasing people and confronting people. And I started to realize that I was getting fan mail from kids saying, or they would reach out to me on Instagram or, TikTok or whatever, saying, "You're brave, and I want to be brave like you. I'm getting bullied at school. My parents are getting divorced. Nobody sits with me at lunch. How can I be brave?" So I started to write it actually as a lesson on how to be more courageous in life. And I believe, and I write about the fact that I think bravery is like a muscle. And the more brave things you do every day lead you to be a more courageous and a stronger person, so that when that time comes in life, when you really need it, when there is a catastrophe, when there is chaos, when there is a huge problem, you will be able to dig into your inner warrior because you have practiced being brave.
Oh, that's just beautiful. And you've that muscle memory, obviously, it just kicks in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lisa, knowing what you know now, what would you say to your younger self?
I would say to my younger self, understand your worth. Understand and demand your seat at the table. Don't hope somebody gives you a seat at the table. Demand a seat at the table. Take on that last name. Push back with that colleague that is inappropriate with you. Tell somebody that's yelling at you, "You do not raise your voice at me." I would have said to my younger self, demand respect. Don't hope for it, don't beg for it, don't wish it into fruition, demand it.
I love what you said. Then I'm going to add that to my repertoire. I always like to quote Shirley Chisholm, who was the first black woman to run for president. And she said, "If you don't have a seat at the table, bring up a folding chair." So
that's it.
Thank you. Congratulations on all of your success and your success for things to come. the series that's going to come from your book, and also the true crime podcast, right? Did we talk about that?
Yeah, well, I have an opportunity to get into the true crime space right now to host a true crime.
Shouldn't
Again,
do it
I love
but
true crime.
Lisa. Yes.
With all my spare time.
Well, that's beautiful, and congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you. And Pat, congratulations to you. 35 plus years here.
Oh, thank
you are an
you,
icon,
Lisa.
and
Thank you.
I admire you so much.
Well, same to you, and you know, one of these days I'll probably write a memoir too.
Do it.
Because it's not easy work, and it certainly has not been for you. But just the fact that you have come out on top of everything that you experienced when you were younger, and you worked and earned every bit of it, then my congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you for watching the conversation with Pat Harvey. Make sure to check our YouTube page for future episodes.